And let's have you start, Dad, with just identifying where and when you served in Vietnam so that others can relate to that and see if they also served alongside you.
Okay, well, what happened was I was after boot camp and advanced infantry training at Pendleton. I thought I was sent directly to Vietnam after my 20-day leave home, which they give you to have your says with your family or friends, whoever. And so it took longer from when I got out of boot camp till I arrived in Vietnam than I thought it did. But the reason I know it took longer than I thought it did is through the records that we found. So, but anyway, landed in Da Nang, Vietnam. You spend, every new person, new soldier that comes there spends about 2 to 3 days in Da Nang. And you're just doing crappy work that they need you to do. You're burning toilets. Our toilets were 50-gallon drums cut in half, set under an outhouse like cabin, and that's where you went in to do your thing. And those were half filled with diesel fuel. And so that's what we did for 3 days in Da Nang, basically burned crappers and did whatever else they needed us to do where we were. And then after 3 days in Da Nang, we loaded up in a truck. I think there was like 8 or 10 of us loaded up in a 2.5 ton, like a dump truck, but it was a truck to move troops. It had seats down both sides of it. And so it would hold about 20 guys, but I think there's 6 or 8 of us. So we were told one morning, you're getting on that truck and you're out of here. So we all loaded up. And in my memory, and what I'm thinking is, we went to Hill 37, which was a big hill, about 8 miles maybe, or 6 miles or somewhere there, pretty close, but not real close to Da Nang itself, the airfield and all of that. Hill 37, I think, was my battalion hill. So that's where we went to be told what company we're being assigned to, more or less where we're going and all of this. So we had to do some paperwork there. And I think I only stayed there that one day and overnight. And then the next morning, we got back on this truck and we headed up Highway 1, which is the main highway that runs from Saigon all the way to the DMZ. And then there's a couple other roads, paved gravel, dirt roads that lead off of Highway 1 that goes, since the US got there, these roads were built to go to the hills and outposts that we had all over the I-Corps where I was. That's the northern 30 miles from the DMZ, about 30 or 40 miles south is where my battalion was, or where the Marines were. I'm sorry, the Marines, all Marines over there were in I-Corps, and that's the upper part from the DMZ down. We loaded on the truck. I remember turning off Highway 1 at a place. Someone with the truck driver told us, this is Dog Patch. You guys will probably be back here once in a while you're in Vietnam. And it's just a little village where they sell everything from, I guess, drugs to mementos or whatever to soldiers, cigarette lighters, watches. Those were the big things. They all said Seiko on them, but they were, fake ones. But anyway, they sold all that. We turned at Dog Patch. We stayed on that road. It seemed like for quite a while we came to a bridge. And the road split there. The main road kept going across the bridge and on out into the bush. The other road that split right at Cobb Bridge went down to a little outpost that I ended up being on for a couple months, or I'm not sure how long, but at least I would think a couple months later on in my time there. across Cobb Bridge on out to what I remember was Hill 65, a big, long, narrow hill. There was villages all around it, kind of. One big one at the base where the road turned up to go onto the hill. We had a wire gate there that we had to open bob wire, wooden gate like the ones cattle ranchers use here, because our hill was completely wired off with concertina wire and different things to keep the enemy from walking up on our hill. In other words, try to make it hard for him. So we drove up there and we got to an area, the truck stopped, all of us got out, and there were Marines walking around doing whatever they were doing. And we were there maybe 20 minutes, and my company, they told me on Hill 37 the first place I went in Vietnam after Da Nang, they told me that I was going to be assigned to India Company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, which at that time was on Hill 65. So that's where we went. We jumped off the truck. I remember our company commander calling the squad leaders from the squads in India Company over to where we were. There was 3 or 4 of us now, because some of the guys went elsewhere on our trip, but 3 or 4 of us ended up on Hill 65 with India Company. And the company commander got together. He gave us a short rundown of where we were, our area of operation would be. You could almost see everything from Hill 65. You could see Charlie Ridge about a mile across the rice paddies was a ridge they called Charlie Worth Ridge, I guess. I knew it as Charlie Ridge. And we could actually look at Charlie Ridge and the triple canopy jungle that was on top of it. And it came down to like a double canopy and then single, and started filtering out into these rolling type hills and then rice paddies, because everything below the hills, the rolling hills, and our hill was flat. So it was all rice paddies. And our company commander, at that time, all of us standing there, the 3 or 4 new guys, we were all infantry, 0311, which is the military, occupational military letters that depict infantry as 0311. It's called your MOS, your military occupational deal. Okay, everybody had different MOSs. We were all 0311 infantry. And I remember a company commander standing there talking to us, and he said, before you guys came, we had some bad things happen and we lost a few guys. And most of the guys we lost were from a weapons team, platoon weapons team. And a weapons team usually consists of about 10 guys, but at that time, everything was, we were always short on guys. Our squads, instead of 12 or 14 guys to a squad, were usually 6 or 7. Weapons was the same way, 4 or 5 guys. And he said, anyway, he said, we had lost these weapon guys before you guys got here. So all of us knew how to operate every weapon that we would come in contact with in Vietnam. We learned that in ITR, Advanced Infantry Training at Pendleton. We learned the machine gun, we learned the radio, we learned rockets, we learned M79 grenade launcher. Every weapon that we would come in contact with, down to hand grenades and mines. And the reason for everybody being able to take over someone else's place on the radio, someone else's place on the machine gun, is because usually when those people were either wounded or killed when you were out in the field, somebody had to take that spot. If you lost your machine gunner, someone had to get on that gun, drag him off and get on the gun, because it was usually urgent at the time. Same thing with maybe you were out and you lost your radio man, and there was only 6 of you in the squad on patrol or ambush. and now you don't have a radio man. Any of 6 of us left could use that radio, knew how to use it to call in support, to call in whatever we wanted. So everybody knew how to use everything, but everybody had a specific job to do to begin with. Our company commander asked for volunteers for weapons because there wasn't enough actual weapons guys left when I got there. So I volunteered for rockets. A couple other guys, new guys that came, volunteered for machine gun or whatever. Yeah, we will volunteer for weapons squad. Called it a fire team. Absolutely, we're here to do whatever we are needed to do. So we volunteered. So I became a rocket man. I volunteered, and I was rockets. Another guy was a machine gun not a trainer, machine gun. I call it a helper, but there's 2 guys with an M60 machine gun. One guy fires a gun while the other guy is keeping the ammo straightened out, going through the gun, because it fires at such a rapid pace, 650 rounds a minute, that if you didn't have somebody helping you with the ammo and getting a new belt of ammo when you ran out and everything, then it would jam. The ammo would get tangled up, whatever. So anyway, machine guns was the machine gunner and his helper. I usually carried 4 rockets on a pack board on my back underneath my regular pack. That everybody had a pack, and it was full of ammo, extra magazines, food, sea rations, water. You kept all that stuff all the time. Whenever you came back from patrol or ambush, you resupplied your pack. If you needed more ammo, you go to the ammo dump, you grab another 2,000 rounds of ammo, you put it in your pack. So everything's always there. It's like a travel bag for someone.
Sure.
You take it, you've got everything you need all the time. And so I carried 4 laws usually on a pack board, a flat pack board, and I would put the pack board on first with laws on it, the rockets, and then I would put my pack over top of that. And then naturally an M16. We were given an M16 and I think 15, 20 magazines when we got there. This was ours till we left Vietnam, however we left. That M16 was yours. You never, ever were without that M16. Leaning up here, laying across your lap, whatever. You might be without food, but you're not without that rifle, period. Everybody carried a M16, radio man, everyone except the M60 machine gunner. It was a big, heavy gun and usually had a bipod on it, and it was hard to carry. The whole squad helped out with the ammo, because usually took like 5,000 rounds of ammo for the machine gun, plus 15, 20 magazines of ammo for your M16, plus extra ammo, plus 4 or 5 grenades, percussion grenades, plus smoke grenades, which we used to, if we called in helicopters to extract us from a patrol or ambush, we used smoke grenades, different colors, so that we could throw a smoke grenade and the helicopter would know exactly, okay, that's them right there. Right. Boom, he would come down, we'd jump on and get out of there. So we all carried different colored smoke grenades in our pack, everything we would need.
Okay.
And,
I know we could focus a lot of time, Dad, on your actual time in service, but today we're going to talk more about what it was like for you after your service time.
And that's fine.
Yeah, so let's think about like when you came home to the States, and I know you were injured and you did some hospital jumping for a while before you were actually back in the States, walking around on your own free will. But tell me what it was like when you left the Marine Corps, when you had your honorable discharge and you were, a civilian back in California in that time in 1969, or I guess it was 1970, right?
It was, 1970 by the time I got out. So I as you know, I left Vietnam on a medevac. I was hit by an artillery round that we were calling in on some snipers. I was medevac out of the field to a hospital ship. And then from what I remember, I went from there to a hospital in Japan, Yokosuka, Japan, which I think is still there. And then after a month or so at Yokosuka, I went to Oak Knoll Naval Hospital in Oakland. Well, they were still trying, and this is 3 or 4 months later after I was medevac out of the field. They were still trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I had horrible back and neck pain, shoulders, arms, legs. I mean, I hurt all over, and I kept having periods where I could, I don't know, I was far from 100%. I'll put it that way. But they didn't know what to tell me. I'm not a doctor. All I know is how I was feeling. I was let go. I was finally let go out of Oak Knoll Naval Hospital. I had, I think, 2 or 3 months left, 2 months, maybe month and a half, 2 months left in the Marine Corps before I could get out. They had what they called an early out program. If you were infantry in the Marine Corps in Vietnam, when you were able, when you sign up for the Marine Corps, you sign up for 3 years. That's it. Well, if you were infantry in Vietnam, you were able to get what they called an early out, and it was 1 year. So after 2 years of service, you were able to get out of the Marine Corps instead of having to serve the full 3 years somewhere. So I immediately, when they asked me, I immediately said, yes, I want out. I want out. Because at the time, still in the Marine Corps, I was so confused about what I was going to do when I got out of the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps is so structured. I didn't know how life was going to be when I got out, and I thought about it a lot. Anyway, I was discharged from the hospital. I went to Okinawa. I went to an air base in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they sent me there, but they did, for something they call staging. I had whatever time I had left doing the Marine Corps, I spent, fortunately, in Hawaii. It was pretty nice. Kaneohe Air Station is where I spent my last weeks in the Marine Corps. And all I had to do in the morning, in staging, they have nothing. All we did in the morning, we got up at 5 o'clock. You went out on the parade deck, is what they call it, where you do marching or whatever. Everybody met on the parade deck at 5 in the morning. They told you to clean up the parade deck area, and then you're done until tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. So it was basically, we were kind of hanging out, biding our time to get out. I was flown back to Treasure Island in San Francisco from Hawaii. Got to Treasure Island. I spent maybe 2 or 3 days doing paperwork. They handed me $130 or $40, I remember, dollar check that they owed me. And they told me to put civilian clothes on. I was no longer allowed to wear military clothes, Marine Corps clothes, to get civilian clothes, put them on, and I had like an hour or two to get off the base. And I remember walking off the base at Treasure Island, and these guys in the duty at the guard station said, "Have a good one, man." I said, yeah. I walked off the base and looked around, and I was so mad. The anger came to me first. I thought, my God, this is how it's going to end for me. After all that I've been through and everybody else that was over there, it's going to end by saying, get some Levi's and a t-shirt on. You've got an hour to get off base. You're no longer a Marine. So I did. I walked off base. I hitchhiked to my sister's house in Huntington Beach. Her and my brother-in-law Dick were living there because he was in the Navy. He was a technician in the Navy. So they were living in Huntington Beach. And so I called her and said, Sandy, if I hitchhike down to your house, can I stay with you? Because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. My family was not an option because I had not been in contact with any of my family. Mom, well, my dad left long before this, but I had basically not been in contact with any of my family for about 25 months, over 2 years. The whole entire time I was in boot camp in Vietnam, in the hospitals, I had not been in contact with a family member. So I thought, I don't want to go home and face any of my family because they obviously don't have anything for me. So I went to Sandy's. I spent about a week and a half there, and I realized that I was working at a Taco Bell. That's the only job I could get at that time, was at a Taco Bell nighttime, work from 7 in the evening till closing at like 2, 3 in the morning. I don't know what time, but anyway, that's what I did for about a week and a half. And I came to realize then that where I was in Huntington Beach was not where I wanted to be. Too many things going on, too many people. I was so confused and so like, wow, I can't believe that this is where I ended up. And they said bye to me, like, see you later. Anyway, my next move was to hitchhike back to where I was raised in Nimshu, up in the mountains above Paradise. I got there, I ran into a couple guys that I had gone to school with, high school there, and but none of them had been, I didn't run into anyone that had been in the service, let alone been to Vietnam. There were no veterans. I would have given anything for a Marine Corps veteran to have lived nearby or to have gotten in touch with, but I couldn't, so I didn't. They weren't around. I started getting into, as time went on, I became more angry. And pretty soon, that's all I was a ball of anger. I couldn't believe that what I had been through and what my 4 other Marines in Vietnam had been through, a lot of them sent home in a box, a lot of them sent home without legs and arms. And it was like, okay, we've used you for what we need. We can't get no more out of you, so later. And I don't know, the anger kept building and building. And naturally, at that time, it had only been 5 months or somewhere in there since I'd left the fields, my India company and my platoon in Vietnam. And yeah, I just, nobody that you met, even these couple guys I ran around with, and they were not the guys your mom and dad, if you had a regular family, which I didn't, but these are not the guys your mom and dad or whatever would want you to bring home. They would not want you to run around with these guys. And it's the only guys I felt like I could fit into, and I couldn't even fit into them more than just getting things from them. Did lots and lots of drinking, did a lot of smoking marijuana. And I basically slept either outside at someone's backyard, or I slept on someone's couch that I knew, or whatever. And that's how 5 years went. I kept getting more and more withdrawn from government and the Marine Corps, because at this time, I blamed the Marine Corps for my, I blamed the Marine Corps for having sent the guys to Vietnam I was with that ended up dying, 18, 19 years old, that would never have a life. And And coming home, the whole atmosphere in Paradise, or in the US, I'm sure, but in where I was, the whole atmosphere was anti-Vietnam. Nobody wanted to talk about it. You couldn't tell anyone when you were looking for a job that you had been in Vietnam. You made up stories to get jobs. They thought everybody returning from Vietnam was a psycho. And when I think about it now, they were right. They were probably real close to being right about that, because you know, the difference, real quick, I've been thinking about this, and I know a lot about it now because I've gone through it. The difference, don't think that soldiers from World War II didn't have PTSD and depression, because the two are hand in hand. I know that now. The PTSD comes first, and what comes first is flashes in your mind. For me, because I don't remember at this time, and I hadn't even thought about it, but I didn't remember names and faces of guys I served with, that I laid in the mud with for 10 months and lived and died with, and saw the things that we saw together. We were so tight, it was unbelievable. And I couldn't believe that we were being treated this way. World War II vets. See, World War II, this is one of the most important things I've been thinking about lately. World War II had that last page to it that said, the end. Vietnam has never, they've never had that page. It's never ended for the veterans that were there, because there were no parades. There was nothing, when we came home, there was nothing but disdain for us. People didn't want us around their family. They didn't want us around. And that drove us into a place in our mind that I don't want to be around you either, because you have no idea what you're even talking about. And it was so horrible. And I had 4 or 5 things that were constantly on my mind. A whole bunch of guilt from leaving Vietnam and leaving my buddies there in the field. And a lot of hatred for the way they treated us when we came home, and you couldn't not have that. If you were in Vietnam, especially combat infantry in Vietnam, for, I think I was there 9 months, 9.5, whatever it was, you were let me think here a minute. You were part of, well, no, you weren't part of anything when you came home. You were left to yourself. You were left to yourself, and you were left to your mind doing what it did. And in Vietnam, most of the bad stuff, not all of it, but most of it happened at night, because of the war. The Vietnamese and the NBA were fighting against us. The only thing that saved them from being blown into oblivion every day was darkness. They didn't move around. They tried not to be seen in the daytime. Once it got dark, that was their time, from then till daylight. And all of these things were so heavy on my mind, and I'm trying to put together, what am I doing? You know, what is going on, and why can't I talk to anyone about this? So I guess I can't. So I was going down the wrong road real quickly when I met your mom, Gail. When I met her, we kind of clicked, her and I fell in love with her real quickly, because I could see that she cared about me and not about Vietnam, because I still up to this day have not talked to her about a lot of things, but I knew that she cared about me. And at that time, that's what I needed. And I fell in love with her. I didn't want to be around anyone but her. And naturally, she didn't know what I had been through or what I was thinking or anything going on with me much, because you put on this mask around people. And the mask is that you're happy, you're smiling, you want to do this, you want to do that, you want to act the right way and all, you know? And Mom kind of helped me see that I had to start living some of that life, or else I was going to destroy myself. And I knew that too. It was like being lost in the world, in my paradise, Chico, whatever. I was kind of, it was like being on the outside looking at a movie every day, I guess. I don't know. Never spoke a word about anything that I did or saw in Vietnam until 47 years later when I came to your house, when I had my last episode. From when I met your mom and we had Jesse, my oldest boy, that changed my whole life. He actually did. I could actually see that, man, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to forget about all that hatred and all of that Vietnam. I'm going to forget about everything that's been affecting me, and I'm going to be a dad now. I'm going to have a family. Well, little did I know that all the horrors that I had seen and been through in Vietnam weren't going away like I wanted them to. They kept coming back on like maybe 3 to 5 or 6 year intervals. Mm-hmm. I would be doing great working. By then, maybe we had Kelly, my other son, under Jesse, born 2 years after Jesse, and then you were born 2 years after Kelly. And by then, I'm thinking, my God, this is it, you know? I felt like I had something to live for and something that was mine. And Vietnam, I didn't even want to think about it anymore. I didn't want to think about the Marine Corps. I didn't want to think anything to do with the government or none of that, because I had to put all that away. I thought to put Vietnam away, and these things that kept coming to me, and they would come to me every 3 to 5 or 6 years. And when they came, it was always the same thing. I wouldn't be thinking about Vietnam. I wouldn't be watching a movie on Vietnam. I never read any books on Vietnam. I would come home from work, sit down and have a beer. Next thing I know, without wanting to, all these things I can remember, the 4, 5, 6 things that are today like they happened yesterday morning. I sat down to have a beer, been feeling great for 2 or 3 years, not thinking about anything. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there having a beer, and without being able to help it, I start thinking about the same 5 things again. And I start feeling really guilty, and that leads to depression. So all of a sudden I'm going from thinking everything's okay and everything's going to be great now to I'm right back again, right back there again to the horrible shit that happened, and there's nothing I can do about it. It won't leave my mind. And I have the same dreams every night. When it gets dark, I used to hate it getting dark in bedtime, because I knew when I was in this period of, call it PTSD, the things that hurt me so bad in Vietnam that I saw and things I helped do, it was always the same 4 or 5 dreams, and they would always end the same way. Short, they seem like short dreams, but the incidences that had a hold of me were always there. The same thing over and over and over and over. And this would go on for maybe 2, 3 weeks. And at times I'd have to come home from work, and I would just go in my bedroom, shut the door, and put a pillow over my head and lay there. And I would just lay there and think, why in the hell is this happening right now? So it would eventually, I had to get up, go to work. I had to do what I had to do. So
Yeah, because Dad, at
Again,
that time, you didn't have any support, right? You didn't have
none,
a
none.
psychologist, you didn't
There
have the
was nothing,
VA.
no sort of VA or anything. PSD was not really known. In World War II, they call it battle fatigue or whatever. PTSD are traumas that happen to you, and it might only last 15 or 20 seconds, but it is so profound, so something you shouldn't be doing or seeing, but you were. And it was, your mind took that in, and that was PTSD. And PTSD came right along after the dreams and the thoughts started. Then the depression came, like, oh my God, I'm never getting over this. I'm never going to find out what is going on, because there was no VA then that I knew of. I was up in the mountains in a little town. I never asked for help. At that time, I didn't want help. The first time somebody mentioned the VA to me, I told them, you know what? You can take the VA and stick it where the sun don't shine. I don't want nothing from any of those people. Government, military, nobody. And why my hatred for the Marine Corps was like that, I really don't know, but I think I blamed them for the things that kept bothering me. Nothing I could do about it. So this went on for, from 1975 is when I got married to your mom, every 3 to 5 years, maybe, sometimes closer together, sometimes maybe a little farther apart, never 10 years without it coming on, usually 6 max, but it would come on, and then I could put it away and I could go on. But I realized even in the 90s, the early 90s, when we moved to Idaho, and I finally got with the VA to get an outpatient clinic doctor so I could get medications, because in 93 was the first time that I had signed up with the outpatient clinic in Pocatello, Idaho. I lived 100 miles from there, whatever. I signed up for them. So I had a caretaker, and he or she would see me every 2 years, or every 6 months, I'm sorry, twice a year. They would do blood tests, they would do cardiogram, they would do this and that. No one talked, though. It was strictly doctors, pills, medication, strictly medication. So in 93 was the first time when I had an episode. It was the same thing again, but this time it was a lot more intense, and a lot more intense, but the same thing, but only way more intense. And I told myself, God, I've got to talk to someone about this. At this time, it's been 70, 80, 90, it's been 23 years.
Right.
I hadn't said a word, one word. I hadn't mentioned Vietnam to anyone in my life, anyone around. 23 years. I had an episode that was really bad. Same thing. Fell into a dumb depression. I called my caretaker in Pocatello, and I told her, it was a him. I need to talk to somebody about things that are going on in my mind that I don't want there. And I don't know what's going on, and I don't know how to deal with them. I've been dealing with them, but I need to talk to somebody that will listen to me. I need to get some of this out, I think. And so she set me up with a psychiatrist. This was in 93 or 94, set me up with a psychiatrist. I went down and I was able to talk to her, mostly crying my eyes out, because the emotion was so much when I was going through one of these things that it was unbelievable. I got to meet with her 5 times, and she prescribed me a pill called Zoloft. It's an antidepressant medication. So I said, yes, whatever will help me not be depressed, not think about this anymore. That's what I need to do. I need to get away from it. And it's like it won't let me. start taking Zoloft, and actually a couple months later, I started feeling a little better. I started feeling like I could leave all this behind me. Well, that was 93 or so. We go for 5 or 6 years. I talked to the psychiatrist a couple more times. I'm feeling pretty good. It hasn't been bothering me much. And then, quite a bit of time goes by on this Zoloft, and I'm wanting to be a normal person. I haven't been what I would call a normal person since the day I was, well, I don't think since a couple months into Vietnam. They say in Vietnam, you leave your soul there. And I don't know if it's your soul that you leave there, but you leave your want for life over there. When you come home, it's you're not the same person that went by any means. And you, I don't know, you just, for 40 years, I never felt excited about doing anything. I thank God that I had you kids that I had, because for me, not telling you about things, but just having you around doing things with you kids and with mom and all of us going on to Santa Cruz or whatever we did, even when this stuff was on my mind, you guys, I could look at you kids and mom, and it helped me a lot, just knowing that I was part of this little 5-person thing. So that helped me a lot. And this PTSD started getting real bad when all of you kids left, because I felt good that I had worked myself and my body into where I couldn't hardly work anymore. And 15 years ago, I decided that I was going to quit drinking, because I had started drinking and it started getting out of hand in my mind. I knew it was getting out of hand, and I didn't want to be that person. And I'm still struggling to try to, at this time, to try to be what I call a normal person. It just wasn't there. Any laugh or any smile I put on my face, I had to put it there. It didn't come natural. I had to put it there. And after all you kids left, and when was it? 2017. I was doing pretty good for quite a while. I was doing a lot of carving, a lot of artwork, because I liked doing it and it kept my mind occupied. And I was doing some pretty nice stuff, and I was kind of proud of myself for what I was doing. And it was something for me to do and not have to think about anything else. I could concentrate, I could think about that. And that worked great until the episode with Zaya. And that was like, what, 48 years at that time after Vietnam. And I told you about that. I don't know if you want me to go into that.
Well, you can, I mean, talk about what you're comfortable with, Dad, but yeah, that was kind of what brought you to my house.
Yeah, it's a big part of, I call it my last hope at a normal life. Because when that thing happened with Zaya, it is so weird. Before that happened, I was fishing and I was keeping myself occupied. I wasn't working anymore, but I was keeping myself occupied. And me and Zaya, from the day she was born, were freaking tight. I mean, the reason I went to her house 3 days a week to watch cartoons with her was because every time I walked into her house, She was so excited. Grandpa, Grandpa, and she'd run over to me and grab me and wouldn't let go. And for me, that was so insanely awesome at the time. So I don't know, I wasn't doing anything about thinking about Vietnam or none of it. I'd been doing the artwork, everything was looking pretty good. And then the one morning I went to watch cartoons with her for some reason. I'm sitting there watching cartoons with her, and I looked over at her, and she realized I was looking at her. So she looked at me and this big smile on her face. And all of a sudden it was like a sledgehammer hit me in the head. And I saw her as one of the kids that I saw in Vietnam. And I had to get up and leave her house. And I told Terry, I gotta go. And I went and got my truck and I drove up Sheep Creek. And I just parked in the bushes and sat there and cried for 2 or 3 hours. I couldn't stop. And I couldn't stop these images in my mind. And that's when I knew at that point that this all, not only being the same as all the other episodes, this was different. This was telling me that if I didn't get professional help with this to figure things out, that it might as well be the end of me, because I couldn't live with that anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. This was the last time I was going to let this come to me like this. And that's when I came to your house the next day. Not because I've got a wife, but me and Mom don't talk about that kind of stuff, Clove. I knew that if I went to you, that you would find a way to help me. I wasn't looking for you to help me. I was looking for you to find a way, because I didn't know how to maneuver through the VA. I needed to find someone right away. I needed to tell what was in me. I need to get it out. And as you know, the VA, soonest time they could get me in with anybody was 3 weeks or something. I tried. It was so hard to tell them that, no, this is a tomorrow thing for me, or the next day max. So you and Brian, my next oldest son, got together and found a counselor in Idaho Falls. Wasn't all what I needed. It was some of what I needed, but it wasn't the right counselor, and I knew that. But you guys were, at least I was moving forward with my talking about this, and I knew that's what I needed to do.
Right.
So I went to her a couple times, and then somehow, I don't know how we ever got a hold of Darshan with the vet center. But I got an
I think
appointment
we
with
actually
Darshan
found
at the
her
vet center.
through the VA, you know, when your VA doctor finally got back to us.
Was it through the VA?
That was how we found her, but.
And I think Darshan kind of rushed the deal.
Yes.
Because I know it didn't take 3 weeks.
No.
From the time I came to your house. It had to have been sooner than that. But anyway, when I walked into Darshan's office and sat down and said hi to her and introduced myself, and she kind of started talking to me a little bit, I knew somehow right there that this was the person I needed 50 years ago, but didn't have it. But I knew she was what I needed. And my God, she turned out to be more than I could have ever imagined in the way of helping me talk. Because all the Vietnam since then, now, this is 3 years later. It's been a long progress. But being able to talk to you on the phone for hours at a time and being able to talk to Darshan for hours at a time allowed me to do what I needed to do as far as, oh my God, it felt like such a relief. Finally, finally, after 50 years, I can tell someone else this. And that takes away some of it off of me, being able to talk about it. I didn't know how good it felt. I didn't have a clue how good it was going to feel to actually talk about it for the first time ever. And it did, and it was exactly what I needed. So, you know, over the last 2.5 or 3 years of seeing different psychiatrists and staying with Darshan once a month, but seeing 2 or 3 or 4 different psychiatrists, different medications that weren't helping, that didn't work. It's all come to 2.5, 3 years later, come to a point now with 6 or 8 months ago when I met and they assigned me Dr. Germer as my psychiatrist, I guess. Don't really know for sure, but I think he's a psychiatrist. But Dr. Germer is a psychiatrist that specializes in medication. Everything with him is medication, everything. And that was okay, because that was 8, 9 months or a year ago. And he actually prescribed me a medication that after 2 weeks or 3 weeks of taking it, oh my God, along with, see, everything is together. Coming to you, going to Darshan, talking to her for hours, talking to you for hours. All along those 2.5, 3 years, I've started feeling better. I've started feeling like, wow, I am one person out of thousands, my same age, 70, 68, 75, 77 years old. My God, I'm actually only one person out of all these thousands of people that have gone through and feel the way I do. And I didn't know that. I thought I was me. I thought I was the only one. I actually thought I was having a nervous breakdown and having a mental collapse when the thing with Zaya happened to me.
Yeah.
And maybe I was. But man, I cannot tell you how much easier it is for me to talk about things.
Right. And I know you went through an 11-week like intensive outpatient program with Darshan where you were, you know, doing your journaling, doing your counseling appointments, all of that stuff is very important. But tell me a little bit too, Dad, about how the community of finding some of your comrades has helped you mentally as well, to be able to talk to those guys that were there with you or that served in the same area as you, you know, saw what you saw, did what you did. How has that helped you too?
Well, naturally, it's helped me because, believe it or not, and I think I'm trying to get times right here. I think 1969 to 2019 is 50 years. Mm-hmm. Now it's 2021, so it's been like 53 years now. But when I came to you, I think it had been 48 years. That's the first time in that time that I taught. And then through our little journey of trying to put in for more disability to help me through the VA, I never wanted anything from them. And that was the hard part. I never wanted anything from them. Gunnery Sergeant 15 years ago or 12 helped me on, because he talked me into going for disability aid compensation through the VA. Before him, I had no thought of ever doing that. So he did that. And that was right at the level where I get free prescriptions. So, and as you know, you were looking into getting a Purple Heart for me, that things were kind of confused. And I ended up finding a guy named Al Marino that was actually in the same platoon I was in. He was actually walking with me, actually lane trying to hide from snipers. That was our last togetherness. But he was actually there with me when I was there. First time in 50 years that I had talked to somebody that was with me there. And then when I talked to him, he was one of the first guys to get to me after the explosion, along with the medic. And I found him. It was divine intervention. It was by an accident on YouTube. But he and Ski ended up being the two people you needed in this pursuit for my Purple Heart. At the time, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody's name, or I couldn't pick out a face from someone I served with in Vietnam. All I have of Vietnam are a few pictures in my mind. I remember what Hill 65 looked like. I remember what Cobb Bridge looked like. I remember what the little outpost down from Cobb Bridge where the Christmas Eve ambush happened. I know what that little outpost looked like. I can close my eyes and see that and everything, but I had never talked to one person. And finally finding one of the guys that rushed to me along with the medic and got me out of the way of the snipers so they couldn't target practice on me because I was down and out. They drugged me into a safe spot and called the medevac. And the radio man that called the medevac and actually that called in the artillery was a guy named Ski. He was our platoon radio man. So he was with the lieutenant at the time this happened. The lieutenant, maybe four guys between them. They weren't standing next to each other. And we were pinned down. So it wasn't like we could group up and say, hey, we need to call. We were on the ground trying to not get shot. The lieutenant told Ski to call in Willie Peter, which is a spotter round, to make sure that we have the grid coordinates right on where the artillery is going. So he called in a Willie Peter round. I heard it whistle over my head and land about 500 yards above me, right at the edge of the jungle. That Willie Peter landed and exploded. Well, to the lieutenant, which he's right now, he's the only one that matters because it's his decision, no one else's. He decides that round landed about 50 yards above where the snipers were. So he told Ski, the radio man, pass the word, drop 50 and fire for effect, which means the next round is going to be the HE, the high explosive. No more Willie Peter spotter rounds. Drop 50 yards and fire for effect. By the time the word got to the lieutenant or back at the hill that the artillery was coming from, somebody screwed up and it went from drop 50 yards to drop 500. So the next round I heard it boom, boom. And you can hear them. They're about 5 miles from us or whatever. You can hear them go off on the hill, just a muffled. And then the next thing you hear is a screaming, kind of a whistling. And you can tell about where that round is going to land before it gets over your head because of the noise degree that it's making. Had been used to a lot of artillery being called in close to us. So I knew when that rounds, I guess there were 2 of them. I thought there was 1, but I guess there might have been 2. I heard the boom, I heard the whistle, and I thought, oh my God, I'm dead. It's gonna hit me. I curled up. It's all I could think of doing was curling up. And that's the last thing I remember. I don't remember anything after that until I think I was on the hospital ship. I don't remember the flight in, but I remember them sent me off the helicopter on the deck of the ship. There was like 4 of us. The helicopter was on another medevac mission. At the time, Ski called the medevac for me, and that actually made them get to me quicker. If they would have been where they stay on their base or on the hospital ship, it would have taken probably 30 minutes, 40 minutes for them to get out to where we were. but they were right over a couple ridges from us on another medevac call. So when I was put aboard the chopper, I know there were more guys on stretchers or laying on the floor of the chopper. I know I wasn't the only one, just because I picked up on that. I remember being put off on the deck of the ship, all of us, so the helicopter could leave. They unloaded us as quickly as possible. The helicopter took off. Next thing I remember is I felt myself moving, and that was guys picking us up, taking us into the triage unit or whatever, the area that they decide, okay, there's 4 wounded Marines here. They're all wounded to a different degree. Where we were at that time, from the deck to this table, there were 3 or 4 surgeons, I guess surgeons, looking at us all, tearing our clothes off and looking at us for wounds. They decided who needed to go to the operating table and who could pass that up and go here. And that's what that place was. It was a place where they decided, well, there was a couple of the guys, I guess, way worse than I was. I had no other than blood from the concussion coming out of my mouth and nose and my ears. Mainly what I had was concussion, because I remember opening my eyes, laying there, and it was like looking through a piece of visqueen or being 3 foot underwater and looking up toward the sky from underwater. You can see the sky, you can see a person up there walking on the deck of the pool, but it's not the same as looking at him outside. So that was my vision. I couldn't, it was like that. And I remember a doctor saying full body concussion. They were talking to one another. This guy had a leg half blown off. He needs to get to operating now. This guy's got this. He needs to go there now. This guy, I heard full body concussion. He needs to go here. I don't remember anything after that. I remember those words from him standing over me, 2 of them looking down at me, and I remember those words, full body concussion. So I didn't have any legs wounds or arm shrapnel wounds.
Right.
It was all internal. So, but what's weird is from that point, that is the last thing I remember of anything until Oakland Naval Hospital, a couple months later, month and a half later.
No, that was 4 months. Yeah, it was a big time frame.
I remember when I got to the hospital in Japan, I remember I can close my eyes and see in my mind's eye this ward, a hospital ward, with beds down both sides of it and a hallway where people can walk down the middle, and then spaces between the beds for doctors and nurses to get in there and do what they need to do. But it's only a quick 5-second picture of that hospital ward. That's right. That's all I remember of my time in the hospital in Japan. And then Oakland Naval Hospital. I remember after a while being at Oakland Naval Hospital, I remember being able to go out on the weekends. On Friday night, I could actually sign out and I could go with someone else. We could go to Disneyland or somewhere. We could go do what we wanted for the weekend. We had to be back Monday morning at 5 a.m.
Right.
And then I spent that week was spent in the hospital doing tests, doing this, doing whatever. I don't remember any of that much at all. I remember going on a couple weekend things, just spats of it, nothing clear. And then they finally released me from the hospital, not knowing any more than they knew when I was on the hospital ship in Da Nang Harbor. Really, not because they had no, I don't know what's wrong with you. We don't know. Okay, yeah. Fine. I'm out of here. I'm sick of it. I don't know either. None of the I don't remember any of the PTSD coming to me while I was in those hospitals. While I was going through that, I don't remember any of it. I don't remember any thoughts. This a reoccurring episode for 50 years. I don't remember any of that happening to me until I hitchhiked back to paradise and got to paradise and didn't know what I was going to do with myself. I didn't know I had me and Pop, my granddad. He was the only one that wrote me letters in Vietnam, the only one that I stayed with after the age of 16. Pop was my guardian angel at that time. He kept me out of trouble. He kept me kind of trying to go in the right direction. Of course, he didn't know what I was doing or anything about me outside his house or outside when we visited. But then, yeah, I don't remember any PTSD or any depression or nothing until I got back to paradise and started living there. And I never rented a house, didn't have a job. I think it was 2 or 3 years before I even looked for a job, because we would actually gather and turn in metal, steel. Steel was at a pretty good $65 a ton or something like that. And that's what I spent, me and a couple friends I had gone to school with that I re-met. I met again when I got back to paradise from Nam. That's what we did for money. We went to all the old mining towns up in Koodalink and Nimshu and Butte Creek, Cherokee, all these old mining towns that were here back during the gold rush and back until the early 1900s. And when they left those gold mines, they left everything there, everything. And it was all made out of iron. And so we scored. We could go to a place, spend 3 or 4 hours in the morning, winching, lifting, getting these big pieces of iron, being gears or whatever they were, tubes of iron. We would load onto a truck, take to Chico to the scrapyard, get 75, 80 bucks for it, and we would go party until that money was gone. And I would stay wherever I ended up that night.
Yeah.
But not yet any flashbacks or any depression that I knew of, other than a lot of hate and a lot of guilt in me.
Right.
Then, after I met your mom and got married in 75 and had you kids, that is when the PTSD started coming back. Mm-hmm. And the depression is what happens when you go through a PTSD episode.
Yeah.
It's separate. It's the same thing. It comes and it takes all of your excitement for life, all of your want for anything. It takes it away from you. That's what depression is. One of the worst things in the world, because when you're depressed at the point that you are during these PTSD episodes, all you know in your mind is you want to feel different than you feel right now. I don't care how you do it, make me feel different. Take this feeling away from me just for a while. I don't want to feel like that no more. But it never went anywhere. It just went down to 3 years of, okay, something would happen maybe, or sometimes I don't remember anything happening to trigger the episode of PTSD, which then within an hour or two or that same day added really bad depression to it.
Right.
So the PTSD episode caused the depression, came right along with it. I would tell people, I'm not feeling good, I got to go lay down. I would go bury my head in my pillow and try and figure out why I couldn't get this out of my mind, why it kept coming back. But anyway, I'm going right back over the same stuff.
No, I think it's been a great story that you've shared, Dad, about your journey with PTSD. And I'm just so proud of you. I know it's been hard to talk about it and I can just see the difference in the last 3 years that you and I have chatted a lot, and your ability to talk through this now and to really share with other people your journey, I think is going to be a huge difference for people. So
it's going to be. And I've got to just say one more thing, and that is that, and I think a lot about this now because I'm able to listen to Vietnam stories. I'm able to listen to other Marine veterans with their problems now and relate to them. And it helps me feel better about the world and about myself and about everything. Listening to them helps me a bunch. And so PTSD has really come along. What was I doing? I wrote something down here. I just need to say at the end. Oh yeah, it was. And it definitely, this is the whole thing that's got to do with Vietnam veterans, PTSD, depression, suicides, all of that in 3 sentences. Difference between World War II and Vietnam. There was an end to World War II. There was a time in June of 45, Germany surrendered. August of 45, Japan surrendered. The war is over. The headlines, not around in the United States, but around the entire world. Everywhere you looked for 30 or 40, 50 days after World War II was all about the veterans coming home, the ones that didn't make it, memorializing them and realizing that we had just, the United States, along with Britain and other allies, had just won a world war that would have been devastating for Europe and the US had we not won it because of the powers in Germany at the time. He was actually a fanatical psycho case, but he was controlling 2/3 of the world at that time. The difference was there was an end to World War II. The parades every day in little towns like Paradise, and I know this from looking back at archives. I don't care how small the town was, Rigby, Idaho, they would have a parade celebrating the end of World War II, celebrating their veterans coming home. A veteran from World War II could not buy a cup of coffee or a meal in a restaurant. Couldn't do it. If you were a veteran of World War II, buddy, keep your wallet in your pocket. Everything's paid for. Vietnam, there was never an end to it. Never, not even in our minds, let alone the country more or less misunderstanding where the veterans were in all this, more or less didn't want anything to do with us. So our war never had an end to it because the people we came home to wouldn't end it for us. They wouldn't help us put an end to it. They didn't want to hear a damn thing about Vietnam. They didn't want to hire Vietnam vets. They wanted Vietnam veterans to go hide in the mountains somewhere and not bother them no more, not be around them. And where they got that attitude is the same place people get most of their attitudes now, from the television, from the radio. And television, radios telling them, oh, yeah, our politicians, you know, they're on your side, America. Vietnam was not a good war. Veterans from Vietnam did some horrible things, and they were horrible people, and blah, blah, blah. The reason he's saying he might be the same guy that was the first one to sign the bill to go to Vietnam, or the first guy to sign for 250,000 more troops to go to Vietnam. He might have been the guy that started the draft for Vietnam. But now that Vietnam's a sore spot on government and government officials, you want to be the government officials that never was for Vietnam. I was never for that war. I understand that veterans come home in horrible mental states that we just don't want to deal with. We want to move past it. So we don't want nothing to do with them or their story. Well, that left I don't know how many veterans exactly like me. Where is the end page to this book? There is none. Where is it? I'm going to live. This book goes on for another 50 years. I can't do anything about it going on, but it's going on for another 50 years. And thank God, the final time, Messiah, I was able to get with you. You were able to help me with Darshan and to get the process started of me realizing that I wasn't alone. And PSD wasn't recognized. And thank God now there's a community of Americans that actually want to hear Vietnam veteran stories. They want to hear the wrongs that were done because it's part of the story. You can't talk about barbecuing a pig one time that we stole from a damn farmer in a hooch. That wasn't Vietnam. You've got, if you're going to talk about the problems on veterans' minds since Vietnam, and I've learned this through you and Darshan, I have to own my involvement there. And I have to become part of a society of veterans that have still, Vietnam continued for them until they came to a point maybe 30 to 50 years later when they knew they couldn't do it no more. So Vietnam, even up to today, has never ended for the veterans that were there. And that is what's so hard. But thank God that people now, oh my God, I've never seen so many good things happening for Vietnam vets, and so many people making it a point to recognize Vietnam veterans. If all of this, if you people had been alive and been the ones, well, after Vietnam, if we could have had any kind of ending to our involvement over there. See, an ending stops it. World War II, guys, the war is over. It ended. You're a hero. Everyone's a hero. We're going to memorialize the ones that didn't make it home every day of our lives from this day forward. But now it's over. It's all over. And you can get on with life. You can buy a car. You can get married, have kids, build a home, buy a home. Life is good. For 20 years after World War II, Lou, my Dale's dad, told me he couldn't walk into a cafe back in New Jersey, where he's from, after World War II, without everybody wanting to buy his food for him and coffee, whatever. They looked at everybody. You helped bring this horrible thing to an end. Well, Vietnam, there never was that ending, and that's what hurts so bad, is that the ending continues to this day.
Right.
But it's so much better today. It's a little late, but the people that are seeing what Vietnam veterans finally need after 40, 50 years are people under 40 years old, 50 years old. The younger people, are the ones that are bringing Vietnam back to life so that there can be an end to it. And that's all I think every veteran, any veteran that feels like I do, all we want is an end to what we went through. All we want is for an ending, for a finality, for that one page to be turned and say, okay.
It can be over. Yeah.
You know?
I think that's a great point, Dad.